everybody, Trevor here. It's been a while since my last mini review, hasn't it? Recently, I've made an image poll asking you guys on which of these Thomas episodes I should review next. And most of you guys have voted for the season 22 episode, Apology Impossible, which is not only a pun on Mission Impossible, but it is considered the worst James episode in existence. But what makes this episode so terrible? Well, we're here to find out. Now, I know that some people already tore this one to shreds, but for me, I want to do my own take on why this episode is so horrible. Let's find out, shall we? It starts off with Philip working at Brenham Docks when James arrives so quickly, bumping into a flatbed of cargo, and James was asking if Philip had another accident, which he didn't, by the way. And to make matters worse, James even got Philip splattered with black oil, and he somehow blames the poor little diesel box cab for it, which leads us to the next scene at the washdown. Philip was about to take his turn when James suddenly intervened and took his place at the washdown. And to be frank, I don't blame Philip for being so frustrated with James because after all, none of this was his fault. Later on, Sir Tom Hatt arrives at the yards asking which engine should take a train full of sardines. But James, being the smartass that he is, pretended that someone was calling for him, leading Sir Tom Hatt to make Philip take the open wagons of sardines instead. And then in the next scene, Philip had to wait by the Fenland Bridge after listening to a flagman, like a good little diesel box cab that he is, but James on the other hand, who was on the other side of the Fenland, just ignored the signalman's flag for no good reason other than being an unlikable jerk, which leads us to a conflict between Philip and James in the middle of the Fenland Bridge, causing a traffic jam with Thomas, Paxton, and Rebecca. Philip tries to get James to say sorry multiple times, but James still wouldn't listen. So in order to make James regret his decision, the other engines all decide to move out of his way first while giving him glares and angry comments, which I don't blame them for. Okay, never mind the unnecessary dream sequence, which adds nothing by the way, but I do mind the fact that James was such an unlikable bully to Philip and the other engines in this episode. Now, I know he is supposed to be vain, arrogant, and self-centered at times, but come on! He was never this mean before. Then in the end, Sir Tom Hatt forces James to apologize to Philip, Thomas, Paxton, and Rebecca for all the delays. Then Philip suddenly accepts James's apology, even though he really didn't deserve it in the first place, and the other engines basically laughed it off as if nothing had happened, kind of like in a Dan Schneider show of all things. What a horrible ending. Okay, here are my final thoughts. Overall, this episode is worse than I remember. James was such an unlikable bully to everyone, especially to poor Philip, and like I said before, I know he's supposed to be vain, arrogant, and self-centered at times, but he was never, ever this unlikable before. There are even other Thomas YouTubers who would kill to do a remake of this episode, but with different characters. Examples include the one with Diesel as the antagonist, while Nominator, a fan of mine, decided to use Vinny to replace James's role. If I had it my way, I would bring back Billy from season 11 and have him be the antagonist of that episode, but with better moral execution. As much as I dislike Billy, but like the other bad one-off characters, he had good potential. For instance, I think his debut episode, Don't Be Silly Billy, would have ended nicely if Billy actually apologized to Thomas for being disobedient. And the same thing should have happened here in Apology Impossible. So therefore, my overall score is a 1 out of 10 star. It's really that bad. In fact, there are a ton of other episodes from other kids shows that can handle this moral better than Apology Impossible. I suggest you stay away from this one as much as possible. No pun intended. Anyways, let me know your thoughts down below on this episode. Do you like it, hate it, or think it's meh? My next main review will be on the season 18 episode Signals Crossed, which is about Toby the Tram Engine. And spoiler alert, it's not as good as I remembered it either. This is Trevor Davis signing off, and I'll see you all again in the next video.